So good morning, Council. My name is Rob Klug. I'm the acting county engineer and the transportation division manager in Public Works. And we're here today to go over the work session associated with the annual speed change recommendations that we have. This is part of a process we go through to ask the council to use their authority under the state law to set speed limits. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Ijaz and he'll get right into the meat of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Good morning, Council. My name is Ijaz Khan. I'm one of the traffic engineers with Public Works Traffic Engineering section. So traffic engineering routinely reviews traffic safety and operational condition on county highways on a routine basis and take action or make changes accordingly. Among the things that we look at are speed limits and parking. And since both of these require legislative approval, we are here before you to talk about speed limit changes. Today, we don't have anything regarding parking restriction. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about 13 corridor segments in Clark County that we are recommending changes in regulatory speed limits. And we will talk about each one of them individually. Next one, please. Next slide. This is an overview of the segments in Clark County where we are recommending changes in speed limit. Next slide. So under state law of 4661-400, the maximum permissible speed on county highway is 50 miles an hour. That doesn't mean you can drive at 50 miles an hour. That is, you can drive up to 50 miles an hour subject to conditions. Majority of the rural highways on county are basic rule. That means it's unposted speed. And the reason for that is there are so many vertical and horizontal curve. It's difficult to post a regulatory speed on a county highway and guarantee that it's safe to drive the entire corridor at that regulatory speed. RCW 4661-415 does provide authority to local agencies or jurisdiction to change regulatory speed based on traffic safety and operational conditions. And I want to say is if it is a regulatory posted speed limit, let's say 35 or 40 or 45, whatever that may be, that speed limit sign shall be posted at the entrance to the corridor. Next slide, please. Generally speaking, parkways, which is the highest category of roadway that we have in the county, are 50 miles an hour. Principal arterial between 45 and 50, minor arterials between 35 and 40, and so on. But that doesn't mean that this is the only speed limit that can be there. These are based on ideal conditions. If it was completely built and everything was per standard, this would be the range. But that is not always the case. And that is why we do a speed study and we look at these, and sometimes it can change or deviate from what you are looking here. Next slide, please. So the elements we look at while determining the speeds, there are three basic things that we look at. The first is the highway, the physical condition of the highway. That means the geometric condition, such as lane width, horizontal or vertical curve, side distance, anything associated with the physical characteristics of the highway. That's one element. The next element we look at is traffic. That's operating speed. Now, within operating speed, we look at a number of things. That is, what is the operational speed or 85th percentile speed? What's the pace? What's the percentage in the pace? And so on. We look at the vehicle mix, meaning the percentage of trucks and other classification vehicle. We also look at crash history. And then the third thing we look at is roadway classification. Is it arterial, it's collector, things like that. What are the number of accesses? Are the accesses like every 1,000 feet, or are they every 100 feet? What is the pedestrian environment? Is it urban? Is it rural? So we look at a mix of things before making a call on what should be the regulatory speed limit for that corridor or that segment. Next slide, please. So the first one we are looking at is 88th Street, and this is east of Ward Road. It's currently unposted basic speed limit, but there are a lot of residential developments that's been coming in here, and we felt it's necessary that we change from, because it's becoming more urban, we felt it's necessary to change it from basic to a regulatory speed limit. We looked at it, we looked at the speed limit, and our original thought was that it would be best suited if we made it 35 miles an hour. We collected the data, we looked at everything else. We could not justify a 35, so we settled on a 40 miles an hour speed limit there, and that's what we are recommending for this corridor. Next slide. So the next segment is 182nd Avenue. That's a continuation of 88th Street that we just talked about. It is very similar in condition to 88th Street. And we had done the same analysis and speed study for that. And based on that, we came to the same conclusion that we should have it at 35. I'm sorry, 40 miles an hour. And that makes sense because that would be a route continuity. We don't want changes, sudden changes in speed limit in a continuous corridor. Next slide, please. The next corridor is Northeast 83rd Street. That's just east of 182nd Avenue that we talked about. This is a short section that is now in the urban growth boundary, and we have a large subdivision development that has come in at this southeast quadrant of 182nd and 83rd Street. So this area is becoming urbanized, and for that reason, based on speed study, we are recommending the speed limit be changed from basic unposted to 35 miles an hour. Next slide, please. The next one is Northwest 119th Street, between Northwest 9th Avenue and Northwest 3rd Avenue. Now, the speed limit to the west of this corridor is 35 miles an hour. Existing, it is posted at 35 miles an hour, but this corridor is resolutioned as 30 miles an hour. Based on the classification, based on the development, based on how people are driving, based on speed study, everything points to that it should be 35 miles an hour, what it is posted as. So we are recommending this to as a housekeeping measure to make it a 35 mile an hour speed limit, regulatory speed limit. Next slide, please. The next one is Northeast 117th Street between Hazelnut Avenue and Highway 99. Now, this is a continuation. So there is a segment between 3rd Avenue and Hazelnut Avenue off 119th Street that we are keeping as 30 miles an hour. The reason for that is there are lots of driveways. It's kind of on a curve. So because that we want to maintain safety, we want to maintain side distance. So we are keeping that section as 30 miles an hour. But on the other side, we decided to make it 35 because nobody's complying with 30. The speed limit doesn't support a 30 miles an hour, and it is posted as 35 miles an hour. So we are recommending that this segment between Hazelnut and Highway 99 officially be resolutioned for a 35 miles an hour speed limit. Next slide, please. The next slide is, the next one is 29th Avenue, north of SR 502 or 219th Street, between 219th and 259th. This is currently posted as 40 miles an hour, but there is actually no resolution for it to be 40 miles an hour. Additionally, 29th Avenue south of 219th Street is an official 40 miles an hour. So in order to have a continuous or constant speed limit between 219th Street and further south, as we just mentioned, that we want a corridor that has a constant speed limit. And as housekeeping measure, we are recommending that this corridor segment between 219th and 259th be resolutioned as 40 miles an hour. Next slide, please. The next corridor is Northeast 172nd Avenue between Northeast Edmond Road and Northeast 18th Street. The existing speed limit as posted as 35 miles an hour, but the resolution for this says 40 miles an hour. Now, this is an urban area that's well built, actually completely built, and there is this school, elementary school and a secondary school, Harmony School there. And for that reason, we feel that 40 miles an hour is too high of a speed limit, and we would like to reduce it to 35 miles an hour. And that's what we are recommending. Next slide, please. The next segment is Northeast 174th Street between 40th. This is west of 50th Avenue, so between 40th Avenue and 50th Avenue. Existing, it is unposted, but this is classified as an urban collector, and a lot of new developments are coming in, and because it's getting urbanized, we are recommending that, and based on a speed study, we are recommending that this segment or this corridor segment be posted as 35 miles an hour. Next slide, please. The next one up is Washougal River Road. Now, we inherited this corridor from Washington State Department of Transportation. When we inherited this, the speed limit was already 45 miles an hour, but it was never resolutioned by the county to make it 45 miles an hour. And for that reason, we are recommending as a housekeeping measure that this corridor between city limits to 412th Avenue be officially resolutioned as 45 miles an hour speed limit corridor. Next slide, please. The next one is Timmin Road between 10th on Timmin Road or 10th Avenue between 279th Street to 1400 feet north of 299th Street. Now, south of what you're looking at, the blue line is city of Ridgefield, and they have it posted as 35 miles an hour. And north of where you're seeing the 40 miles an hour blue line, that is in Clark County, and that is posted as 40 miles an hour. And further north, the city of La Center, that is also posted as 40 miles an hour. So the blue section that you're looking in, that is the only section we have in there that's a 50 miles an hour. So it doesn't make sense to have a 40 and a 50 and a 35. And for that reason, we are recommending, in the interest of having consistency in speed limit in the corridor, we are recommending that this small segment be resolution as 40 miles an hour. Next slide, please. The next segment is Northeast 119th Street between St. John's Road and 72nd Avenue. Now, this is an urban local access road that functions like a circulator. It's center line stripe. It doesn't have a lot of direct access that you see on local access road. And it connects two arterials, arterial of St. John's Road and 72nd Avenue. Currently, it is posted as 25 miles an hour, but the resolution for this is says 35 miles an hour. We feel that 35 miles an hour is too high of a speed limit for a circulator street, and speed study support making this corridor a 30 miles an hour corridor. And that for that reason, we are recommending that this corridor be resolution for the previous resolution rescinded, and this one be recommended for resolution of 30 miles an hour. Next slide, please. The next corridor is 221st Avenue, south of Cedar Creek Road, between State Route and Cedar Creek. We had previously looked at this, and we had recommended 40 miles an hour, but then we revisited this corridor based on public comments. There are a lot of businesses there, both on the east and west side of the road. And it's semi-urban, and for that, it's rural urban kind of thing. And for that reason, because of the activities and business activities and people pulling in and out of the driveways, we are recommending that the speed limit on this segment of 221st Avenue be reduced from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour. Next slide, please. Next one is Kramer Road between Northeast 189th Street. Sorry, Kramer Road / 189th Street between 184th Street to 113th Avenue. Now, this corridor is existing speed limit is posted for 25 miles an hour, but the resolution for this corridor says 40 miles an hour. Now, this corridor has speed bumps. It has a school there. There are other driveways and other things in there. And because this already has speed bumps, this is a school fashion, this is a school. So the appropriate speed limit for this corridor is actually like an urban road, 25 miles an hour. And we are recommending that this corridor be, the previous 40 miles an hour resolution be rescinded, and the new speed limit be set as 25 miles an hour. Thank you. That was all. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you have any questions or comments on these.
We have questions from the council.
I have a question.
Council Brown.
Would you please go back to number 8? It's on Northeast 174th. And
Yeah.
if you could explain that just a little bit more as to why, again, that reduction is to the extent that you're recommending.
This is the two reasons. One is when we come up here, there is this road, I believe that's 40th Avenue, that come up. You look to your left and right. You don't, if it's 50 miles an hour, it's very difficult to obtain what we call the line of sight. Second, we did a speed study there, and that was supporting a reduction in speed limit from basic to 35 miles an hour. And third, since this is an urban collector, urban collectors are typically not basic speed limit. And as I said, there are developments coming in there. And for that reason, we are recommending this to be 35 miles an hour.
Will those developments likely be houses?
Yes, that is correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And just another question, just because I've been hearing more about this from various constituents. Do you look at the impact of speed limits or restraints on the road relative to street racing at all?
And no, that is more of a enforcement issue, the street racing, and not following the rules of the road or violation of speed limit. What we look at is based on the conditions that we just talked about, the highway physical status of the highway condition, the lane width, the vertical and horizontal curve, the operational speed limit, the crashes, pedestrian activities, roadside environment that we talked about, is it urban, rural, residential, those kind of things. So we typically base or recommend speed limits based on those factors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Briefly, Madam Chair, a lot of these are obviously in my district, and I've driven them, pretty much all of them. What is the transition period, if there is one, when you go from unposted basic? I mean, basically, people are driving more than 50 miles an hour, whether at night or during the day. We get constant complaints of speeding. Washougal Road's pretty consistent example of that. So when you reduce from an unposted basic, which is, I would say, 50 and above, and then repost it to 35, is there some transition strategy that you have to kind of bring people in compliance, let them know that it is, I mean, that's a pretty severe reduction to
Yes.
35.
So what we typically do in cases where it is like this, if it is from 35 to 30, it's not such a major impact. But if it's let's say it used to be basic or 50, and now you're making it 40 or 35, we have traffic revision, and oftentimes what we would do is we would have flags, red flags, that to draw attention or things like that. That's what we do, and they stay there for some duration. It could be a few weeks or a couple of months, depending. And then when it wears out, we don't replace them. It's just to draw attention of the traveling public or the drivers.
Okay, but there really is no step down transition. You just go from unposted to 35. There's no
Yes.
intermediate posting of 40 or 45. It just
No.
goes right to 30.
No. So if first of all, let's say we are coming from a basic to a 40. I mean, just give an example. And so if we are doing that, we would have traffic revision ahead, and oftentimes we would have a sign that says reduce speed ahead, and we would reduce speed ahead, and what that reduced speed is, let's say 40 miles an hour. We'd have that 40 there, so people are aware that they're coming from a high speed environment, and they're going to be getting into a lower speed environment.
Answer your question, Counselor?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the council? If not, the next steps are, will we have this at a hearing and pass this as a resolution, or?
Yes, so once it's passed as a resolution, then that would be converted to an ordinance, and once that's all signed and everything, Public Works would send out work order to our maintenance and operation maintenance crew, and they'll take actions accordingly. We will prepare work order, and they'll put the signs accordingly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So if there are no other questions of the council, we will close this work session. Thank you so much for your presentation, staff. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Mhm.